Hello, Long Darkers. Welcome to Survival Guide to the Long Dark. If you didn't guess by the title, we're here to teach you guys both how to fish and whether or not fishing is worth it. So put on those wool ear rats, satchel up that moose hide, and let's dive right on in. So the first thing you're going to want to keep in mind when it comes to fishing is the world of the Long Dark is incredibly cold. And after some time in the game, you may actually get some very decent gear put together, as I do here. But even in decent gear, as the game drags on, the outside temperature decays over time, meaning the game world gets colder. The effect of this means you're probably going to need to suit up, especially when it comes to doing anything outdoors, including fishing. Oftentimes a fire will be required when fishing to even stay warm. As you can see, we've got a full-on blizzard raging outside, which drops the temperature even further than normal, but I've got myself a nice raging little fire going here. We'll be plenty warm for this. So the first thing you'll need when it comes to fishing is go to your tools and make sure you have a tool to break open the ice with. A hatchet, a knife, and when I don't have on me, a pry bar or a heavy hammer. All of those can break open the hole in the ice. Another thing you might want to bring with you is a recycled can or a cooking pot to cook your fish in or make water while you spend time cooking. You can have your fire do beneficial things for you besides keep you warm while you wait. As you can see, I caught a little fish earlier, only 332 calories, not very big. Anyway, so how you fish? You break open the hole. As you can see, I've had it broken open before. It opens very easily and quickly for me. The more frozen over it is, the longer it takes to break open. When it comes to fishing, you fish in hour increments. All you have to do is have it open, have your fishing tackle, which I forgot to mention when I went over tools, so we will real quick. You need fishing tackle to fish, and it can break during fishing. As you can see, I just spent 1 hour fishing, and I caught nothing. You may want to, well, it looks like my water boiled away, sadly, during the time. Let's try again. See if that water will stay alive long enough. And you have to fish in hour increments. I just broke a line. If it stops early, it means you broke a line. I'm gonna try 1 more hour again. There we go. I caught a small fish. It's a little rainbow trout. You can catch salmon. And I didn't get any other fish in the rest of the time. And now you can just place your fish up there. So you see I spent 4 hours fishing, and I only caught 1 fish at 440 calories. Now we're getting into our discussion of, is fishing worth it? Now before we go over anything else in fishing to know whether or not it's worth it, you gotta check your skills. The 2 major things that impact if fishing is worth it is your skill at fishing and what difficulty you're playing at. I'm playing at Stalker. Stalker and Interloper have some of the worst fishing that you can get in the game. Pilgrim and Voyager have some of the better fishing in the game, and also on Coastal Highway, a little tip some of you guys might not be aware about, the ice fishing huts further out on the ice away from the shore. I'm rather close to the shore, as you can see. The ones further out and away from the shore have some better options for getting fish, especially coho salmon instead of these little tiny baby rainbow trout. So keep that in mind. So if you're playing in Stalker or Interloper, sometimes fishing may not be considered worth it because of the decreased likelihood of getting a fish in those difficulties. The other thing to keep in mind with fishing is, while you can have your fire do stuff for you, such as boil water or cook food, while you fish, you can only fish in hour increments. And as you can see, I spent 4 hours to only get 1 fish. It's 400 calories spent doing nothing, and only 446 calories gained. 46 calories was my net bonus out of all of that. So I spent 4 hours to gain 46 calories, and I couldn't do anything else during that time. 46 calories might last me 15 to 30 minutes of in-game time, not actual real-life time spent playing the game. Well, that's a very poor return on investment. Couple that with the fact of if I didn't have any food to cook or water to boil, my fire would have just been wasted heating me up. And even if it wasn't wasted just heating me up, I also just had to have the fire to stay warm. So I had a fuel expense coupled with my food gathering expense. Those 2 things coupled together, regardless of what difficulty you're playing on, has a heavy impact on the consideration of, is fishing worth it? even abstracting this concept out of the fire, because some days it will be warm enough where you won't have a fuel cost associated with collecting the food. You have the time spent associated with collecting the food. While as your fishing skill goes up and the further out in the ice you get, then if RNG gets better in your favor, you can get bigger fish and catch fish more often. Man, I have a very handy lisp here when saying fish. Even with those, it's still a pretty poor return on investment. Some of the bigger fish you can get can be 1,500 to 1,800 calories, but still, even with those high calorie counts, that's only a little bit of time spent, or a lot of time spent just to get that. So, that brings us back to the discussion of, is fishing worth it? Well, compare fishing to any other method of collecting food. Hunting deer, moose, bear, and wolves, if you're into that, is probably the most common method of collecting food in the long dark. And there is a moderate amount of time involved in doing so. You have to know where your prey is to hunt it to begin with. You have to spend the time getting in position either with the bow or the rifle, the time shooting. If you don't kill it outright, it's time spent tracking or waiting for it to die. And then all you have to do is harvest it. Overall, the total hunting time may take up less than an hour of in-game time, and depending on what you killed, the time spent harvesting it may only take up to a couple of hours. For the 4 hours it spent for me to get that one fish, I probably could have taken care of an entire deer. And a deer nets a lot more calories than just 400 calories. The one benefit to fishing though, especially in the late game if you've run out of lantern fuel, is you get lantern fuel, as you see in the upper right hand corner, from cooking fish. So that does help. But it's in very small increments, as you can see. Not a whole lot. Won't keep your lantern full very long. The easiest method of collecting calories in the game, most likely, or most often considered anyway, is stoning or snaring rabbits. Rabbits net anywhere between 400 to 800, maybe 1,000 calories if it's a big rabbit. And if you're snaring it, you literally just place the snare out and come back later, virtually no time spent, or stoning it, a little bit of time spent. Harvesting a rabbit takes very little time, and you have those calories ready for you to cook up just about immediately. So between all the methods of getting food, be it harvesting cattails, reishi, and rose hips, and cooking those up for their minuscule amount of calories, be it hunting any of the big game and killing them for their calories, or going after rabbits for those calories, all of that takes far less time and yields far more calories than fish do. And that's before you take into consideration the fuel time not spent cooking a fish, but just to stay warm if it is a cold day outside like it is for me right now. All told, the most major impacts you're going to need to consider when fishing, if you ever want to do fishing, is the difficulty you're playing at, the weather outside to determine whether or not you're going to need a fire to even stay warm, and the fact that fishing has a very poor return on investment in terms of time spent. So if you consider, is fishing worth it, a metric of time spent versus calories gained, regardless of a fuel cost, either to cook the food or to stay warm while you harvest your kills or fish, then fishing is the slowest or longest return for the most minimal gain, which makes fishing automatically, regardless of difficulty, the least viable or the worst option in the game. If it is a cold day, you also have the added fuel cost of just staying warm and not just cooking the fish as well. I hope this has given you guys some things to consider when it comes to fishing, some metrics to think about. This isn't to say that you should never fish at all. It's just to say that there are far more viable methods of collecting food in the game than fishing. Fishing has its place. Its place as a supplementary food collection or calorie collection source, and it is useful for collecting lantern fuel after you've exhausted all other lantern fuel supplies in the wild that you can normally collect. And sometimes it's a thing to do while you wait out cabin fever or have a bout of intestinal parasites. So it does indeed have its place. It is not a worthless thing in the game. But as it stands, it is probably the weakest or worst choice to go if you're just wanting to get brute calories. I've been Lonelywolf. I hope this guide has given you some insight into fishing. If it has, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, or sharing the video. Until next time, I've been Lonelywolf, and I hope you guys stay safe and stay warm out there. Good luck!